Hello and welcome to the 59th episode of In Our Defense. Hi Abhishek, how are you?
Hi Dev, how are you doing?
All well, very busy week for you, I'm guessing.
Extremely tied
Yeah.
up, yes. A lot of drama even after a clear election win
result,
for the
yeah.
Congress in Karnataka, but the internal theatrics have taken over. Let's see how long it lasts,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's a busy weekend for the two of us. The results came out on Saturday.
Yeah.
And since then, it's been quite busy.
You working on Saturday?
Yeah, I was working on Saturday.
Me too. Yeah. Sunday was also sort of a busy day.
Yeah, not as much.
Yeah,
Small
but,
break
yeah.
between, but still, yeah, quite busy otherwise. So how have you been otherwise? I mean, have you been trying? Because I mean, I think this has just consumed I think my entire day. So
It's,
the last
most
1
of your thinking and planning has just been around this.
week. Yeah.
So if we do a bad job on In Our Defense this time, we should be excused.
We should be excused, yeah. But you can, let us know regardless. You can, to our listeners.
Because
and,
both of
viewers
us have other responsibilities, isn't it?
as well, yeah.
So I am not in the mind frame to
do
think
an episode
defense
this week,
right now. That's the problem.
Yeah, I can understand. I can totally understand because I think I'm in the same space.
Yes.
It's so much happening. It's kind of tough to suddenly talk and think about something that's just like that seems very not happening this week
Yeah.
because and I think even news-wise it's been quite dry.
Pakistan is happening.
Pakistan
where a
is
bit of
happening.
military is there.
Yeah.
But we did Pakistan.
We did Pakistan, and I think now it's just like more of a daily development, like some code development here and there, and nothing much happening, nothing fast-paced basically.
Yeah, I think the timing was right. Pakistan, we got the timing right.
The last episode. Yeah. Speaking of which, the last episode, I got a comment from one of our I think listeners who said that sometimes they find it a bit difficult to find the latest episodes. So to everyone, if that's the case, there's a specific place on our YouTube channel where we have our episodes listed. You can go to the India Today's YouTube channel and click on the podcast tab where you'll find In Our Defenses episodes whenever they are out, which is
So
usually every
all the
Thursday.
video.
All the videos
videos
are there. Yeah. On Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, they're there. By
So
now.
the videos would be fewer because
Because
how
we
many
began, I
videos
think,
have we done now?
around 10 now, if I'm not wrong. 10, not 10.
More than 10,
More
I
than
think.
10, I
More
think.
than 10,
Yeah. Right. And, on other platforms, if you're listening to us on other platforms, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, just drop whatever rating you think is, whatever you think of us, basically. And if you'd like to, reach out to us and let us know in writing what you think of our episodes, do let us know at pods@indiatoday.com. That's pods@indiatoday.com. Right. So, Abhishek, this week we'll discuss something that we talked about last time, actually, before we discussed Pakistan. We didn't speak about it on air, but we spoke about it personally when we were trying to figure out what to talk about. It's a piece of development that I don't think it got much traction in mainstream news. I mean, there were reports about it. But it was mostly followed by people who really follow defense, which I'm guessing is a large chunk of our viewership and listenership. And a subsection of people who are really passionate about this one aspect of the military, which is uniforms. I don't know if you've done this, but if you go online, you'll actually find forums online where you have people discussing just everything to do with military uniforms, whether it's Indian or any other military in the world. They'll sit and dissect and have histories about it, because I'm guessing this is a very integral part. I'm not saying not integral in the sense, not integral in the sense of in the military sense, but integral in terms of tradition to almost any military in the world.
What's your favorite uniform? Which service?
With service, I'd go with the armored one, actually.
Oh, but
If I'm not wrong, they are the ones who wear black, right?
Yeah. That's the beret.
Yeah, but
I'm
even
talking about the uniform, amongst the services,
so that brings the question that what uniform, because there are so many uniforms actually.
the basic everyday uniform or the camouflage. Let's put the two.
If I were to go with the everyday uniform, I'd go with navy.
I think so.
Yeah, it's white.
Stands out.
Stands
isn't
out.
it?
Yeah,
And
smartest looking, I think.
Yeah, the camo, I like the new Indian Army camouflage. that's
Yeah.
come out.
I forgot what's it called. The digital print. If
Yeah,
I'm not wrong. But how was it decided, by the way? Is it based on the various terrains the Indian Army operates and the logistics?
No, the camouflage is common.
It's common across.
common,
yeah.
yeah,
So
Across the three services. I mean, every service has their own. But yeah, I mean, the name suggests that, camouflage is supposed to be a camouflage.
Yeah.
So the new Indian Army uniform, which is a which is the digital print that you mentioned, is a little different from the one that has been worn up till now, and not everybody's got it. I still see
it's
some people wearing the older ones. Senior officers have got it, but it's not been done all through. So I think in some time you'll have the common uniform camouflage or the fatigues, as they are called, being worn. By the way, the army wears them every Friday, so that's their.
Yeah, I've heard about this. Yeah, even when they're at their headquarters.
Yes.
So even Friday at the Delhi headquarters, by the way, you'd find the army chief wearing the camouflage.
So this India Today conclave, when army chief came for our conclave as a guest, he was one of the speakers, General Manoj Pandey. So it was a Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
so
conclaves take place on every Friday, Saturday.
Yes, that's right. So it was a Friday. So he was wearing a camo because it was a Friday. And some people asked him that we usually associate this uniform with battle.
Are you going to fight a war right now?
He also told that this is a Friday uniform that we wear even at the headquarters. Not just him, others who were accompanying him were also wearing.
Yeah, I remember the photos. I remember the photos actually from the event. Yeah, so uniforms have a lot of tidbits associated with them. I remember back when I was when I wanted to join the NDA and I was preparing for my SSB, so I kind of just was researching just for my personal knowledge. So even within the NDA, which is the National Defence Academy for people fresh out of schools, which is college for essentially military training. Even there, you have various uniforms. You have
of course.
the morning PT uniform, and then you have breakfast uniform, and then
the boarding school that I went to had different uniforms for different times of the day, different events. So there was a ceremonial kind of a uniform that you wore for special events, and one was the everyday uniform. So I think the training did start from these kind of schools that have sent a lot of people to the armed forces.
Yeah. Right. So we don't want to talk about just uniforms, by the way, generally. But now that you asked me this question, I'll also ask it to our listeners and viewers. Do let us know.
Yeah, they should let us know
what your favorite uniforms are between the services. Mine is Navy. Like
and the ceremonial ones are even more fascinating.
Yes, actually.
And again, the Navy has most. The number of uniforms that the Navy has is crazy.
Okay.
Yeah. They have the most number of uniforms for every different thing. And and I think they're the most interesting. Yeah.
Right. So do let us know what your favorite uniforms are from the services. You can drop a text to us at 8588 966 996 or an email to us at pods@indiaradio.com. That's pods@indiaradio.com. So what I wanted to talk to you about was something that was reported last week in all the websites and all the publications, is that officers in the Indian Army who are brigadiers and above will now be wearing a common uniform. When we say common, what we mean is they will not be having, and you can explain more, but what I understood is that they won't be having any visible, let's say, patches or signs on the uniforms that signify that they are from this particular regiment. I think the most, to give an example, I think the image that I can think of is the late General Bipin Rawat, and I remember him having Sikkim Scouts written on his shoulder patch because he was from that regiment.
No, he was actually a Gorkha Rifles officer, and Sikkim Scouts. I think he was also the colonel of the regiment.
All right. Maybe that's why.
So he had Sikkim's on, but he was a Gorkha Rifles officer, an infantry regiment.
Right.
So again, but the example is the right one because I think the most striking difference is that hat which Gorkhas wear.
Yes.
Also the Kumaon regiment, I think, and even the Garhwal has a similar hat. So the Gorkha Rifles is always associated with that kind of hat, which is completely different. So even as the chief,
it stood out exactly. That's why his name comes to mind, because in my recent memory of all the army chiefs I've seen, he's the one that stands out because of the hat. Yeah. Everyone else, it's a minor differences. Like the shoulder patch, the writing might be different because the
lanyards. The lanyards is another thing.
Yeah, but these are not very.
I don't know if people who don't follow military know what lanyards would be. mean, of course, they can go and check the
They're like
meaning.
sort of like ropes that are slung
Yeah,
over
sort of
the
a
shoulder.
cord around the shoulder.
Golden usually, if I'm not
No,
wrong.
different colors. That's, I mean, every regiment has a different color.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the hat is the most striking part. So that's the reason I remember Bipin Rawat when we talk about this aspect of what was reported last week.
So, for example, the Sikh or the Sikhlai has Sikh light infantry, or the Sikh regiment has a saffron kind of a lanyard that stands out again.
Okay, yeah,
on an
it's
olive green,
exactly.
wearing saffron.
It doesn't really blend with it, so it just stands out. Yeah, right. So first, explain what's happened with this.
Yeah,
move.
so as you rightly said, Brigadier and above common uniforms, I think a big change. The reason is that once you've moved out of your regimental role and you've become a brigadier, there should be no visible affiliations to your regiment, because then you are in different roles, different staff roles, basically leadership roles outside your regiment as well. So idea is that have more uniformity towards a common army rather than... See, a lot of infantry regiments have this thing about Paltan,
Yes.
which is very important at the Paltan level. But there has to be a time where senior officers, maybe it's easier said than done for somebody who's not been there. But rightful thinking, if I can take the sort of leeway to use the term rightful, would be not to get tangled in regional affiliations, because that sometimes creates hurdles.
Right.
And that's been one of the most debated aspects of the Indian Army. And this is mostly for infantry regiments, because they are the ones who, some have a caste component, some have a religious component which stands out. So their culture is different. So while you can maintain, you can go for your regimental events, dinners, etc. But in your everyday functioning, it shouldn't be visible. You should be just the Indian Army. And there are very interesting things that stand out. As you said, the hat, the berets that they wear. Of course, the black one by the Armored Corps again stands out, because it's black as opposed to what the uniform is. The maroon beret is
of the special
obviously
is
the funkiest thing that comes across. The special and the para regiments, special forces and the para regiments. So they'll have to do away with it. If you become a brigadier, leave it for the colonels. And I was reading, in fact, I didn't know this thing until a few days back when I was just reading about this subject, that back in the 80s, until the late 80s, a similar pattern was followed. But somewhere in the mid 80s, this thing continued. They went back to this practice of senior officers also wearing the same uniforms. See, right now, the regimental service of an officer actually ends when he or she is a colonel. And as a colonel, you command. So, actually, come to think of it, after you've commanded, after you've been a CEO of your Paltan, you move out of regimental service.
Right.
The next posting would be outside of your regiment, could be outside of your regiment. So if you ask me, it should have been for colonels till the time they are CEOs.
In the same regiment, yeah.
Once they've moved out of being a CEO, then they should actually shed their regimental affiliations. But anyway, I think it's a good thing that's been done. And I'll tell you something that you might not know. In fact, many defense correspondents didn't know. I was somehow aware because I noticed these things a lot. Do you know that even shoes can differ?
No, I did not.
It's very interesting. So I didn't realize that something as basic as shoes also will have to change.
Okay.
So some of the armored units, armored corps units, actually wear brown shoes.
Okay.
Not black.
I did not know.
Yeah. So I knew this, but I did not fathom or think that even the shoes aspect will change.
Oh.
So it was brought to my notice that even the shoes will have to change. So no more brown. Those who wear brown. Actually, armored guys are a little weird.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a little different. So this brown shoes, I think, is about being different. Also, they're allowed to keep long hair.
I don't know that.
In some of the regiments, they're allowed to keep not a ponytail. I mean, now we're not saying that they'll go headbanging with their long hair or something, but slightly, which is different from the norm.
Okay.
So they consider themselves slightly different.
I don't know. I know about the armoured being a bit, the armoured corps being a bit different, because I remember seeing some, I forgot which, I think when the army chief was visiting some base somewhere, and I saw some officer. He was in black, and I was like, what? And then I, researched a bit, and apparently the logic goes that because they work with tanks and all, they have, oil all around them. So
that's the
basically keep the uniform, for the patches not to show, basically. That's the sort of the logic. So that's all I knew. I didn't know the shoes were different.
Yeah, so not all of them, not all armoured regiments, some of them.
Oh, okay.
In that also, even within that, there is a sort of a classification.
Right.
Then, of course, something like ranks. Lanyards we've already discussed. Ranks are different. The color of them. So all the rifle regiments in the infantry, which have rifles in front of them, have black ranks. Gurkha rifles, Rajrif, anything that has rifles, all rifle regiments. So that will change. They'll have common sort of ranks again. And an interesting thing is that, why this has happened. This has happened. Also, timing is important for these things. You have an engineer officer who's the army chief.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have these affiliations. These decisions are easier when somebody right at the top is sort of above
all of
these things.
Yeah.
So a classic infantry officer, if he were at the helm,
would not have.
I'm not sure
if
this decision would have been taken.
Yeah. I mean, they probably would have seen the logic behind it, but it probably wouldn't have been taken because of just the tradition associated with it. Yeah. Because
this is my personal reading into it. I'm allowed this much of this thing, understanding the army a bit. So I think because this is something which has been debated for long. It's not something new. Now the next step, the biggest challenge is, will the Indian Army ever have a common uniform? See, why did this stop at colonels? Because somewhere there's this feeling that, yes, when you're with your troops, you should look the same. You should have the same uniform. I think that aspect has come in. That, or the other thing is that you just wear one uniform like some other countries do.
Yeah. No difference at all between different regiments. Yeah.
I don't think, you can differentiate. In the US, I think, of course, the officer and the ranks, there might, some differences, minor differences would be there. But really, caps and berets.
They probably won't,
Lanyards. I don't even know if they wear lanyards. Maybe in the ceremonial
perhaps,
uniforms they would have, but working uniform, I doubt that they have lanyards.
Yeah. So, was this long time coming? You said this was discussed for over.
Buckles again, belt buckles.
Belt buckles, yes.
Another one. Yeah. Belt buckles had
different insignias.
So now it will just have an Indian Army insignia for brigadiers and above.
But was this a long time coming? You said this has been discussed for.
It has been discussed. It's part of the discourse. In fact, changing the uniform is part of the discourse.
Okay.
Yeah, completely a common uniform. So I think it's a beginning. If we have more chiefs from non-infantry kind of affiliations, then who knows? That might change as well.
Is that a controversial statement, by the way?
No, why is it controversial? I don't think so.
I
I don't think it's controversial.
Right. So tell me, and this is something that I even thought of back then when we spoke about the regiment system of the Indian Army in context of the Agniveer scheme, which proposes, not exactly proposes, but which kind of sets up an all India, all service sort of a class system within the army, and we discussed the aspects that are not easy to see at first instance. So something like this, something like changing the uniforms of officers who are brigadiers and above, is it just a cosmetic change, or does it actually have a difference?
I think it's a precursor.
It's a precursor
to something else. Yeah.
But when I mean cosmetic change, does it really also address a problem that is present right now, or is it just, like you said, a step towards a larger overhaul that will address
now
larger
you've asked
problem?
a very controversial question and you're couching it as something which is not controversial. So if you want to be clear, I allow you to be clear, or if you want me to bite the bullet, I will do it. So you are trying to say that regimental affiliations come in the way
Yes,
of
Let's
functioning
do it that
of
way.
the
Yeah,
army.
yeah. I'm not trying to do that, but I'm not trying to couch it. But yeah, I was basically asking that regimental affiliations, just because a particular officer has been from a particular regiment, that officer rises up to the through the ranks, and now he oversees the functionings of various units and regiments.
See, it
etc.
can happen.
Does it happen?
It can happen. Not saying that it's the norm. It could be the exception. It's been prevalent. People from non-infantry kind of affiliations have raised this concern. I wouldn't say have complained, but have raised their concern that at times it comes in the way of some important decision making. What these decision makings could be is difficult to say. One wouldn't want to conjecture on those aspects. But yes, if this is a precursor to sort of move away from such kind of affiliations that are far too deep rooted, then of course it will have a big implication. And again, it's in sync with what the Agniveer scheme is.
Yes. I actually didn't notice per se, but I was going to ask you about this, that this is part of the larger thing, right? Because the moment you discussed this last week with me, you mentioned, by the way, wasn't aware when you told me about this, because I think that is when the news was just kind of coming into all our systems, so I hadn't seen it. But the moment you said it, my first thing was, this is somehow linked to the Agniveer scheme. I don't see it as
the problem with this is that if we sort of simplify it, then the counter debate would be, if this were linked to the Agniveer scheme, then they would have changed uniforms of the entire Indian Army.
It's baby steps.
Yeah, so it's. I don't think. I think nobody wants to sort of take big radical decisions. Of course, Agniveer was one. Agniveer was one.
Yeah, it was one.
So you don't want a double engine to strike them here.
Right. Double engines everywhere.
Yeah. So you don't want a double engine to strike them here. So yes, Agniveer has been a big change. Easily the biggest reform. Yeah. We are not getting into it, whether it's right or wrong. We've discussed this before.
And we'll have the links to
those links can be there.
But drawing from that, this is something we discussed even then. The army as an institution is so big that it's prone to inertia and it's resistant to change. Yes. So perhaps maybe what you're saying, baby steps here and there.
Yes, it was resistant to change, and that's why it's taken a while.
Because I'm pretty sure that this particular move of doing away with the regimental uniforms for a particular rank and above, there will be a section in the army, serving and retired, who would not like this.
For some reason, I have not really seen people openly criticize it.
Okay, interesting.
For some reason. I mean, there was no such noise on social media for sure.
Did you come across? On social media, I'll tell you something, because actually this news development has gone under the radar. No one's really...
No, see, the veterans
It's been there in the...
No. Veterans are quite active on social media.
Yes, I haven't come across.
And for them, it doesn't matter what else is happening in the world or not. For them, these matters are big enough. So I haven't come across anybody sort of saying that kuch galat ho gaya. And personally also, I don't know. I haven't been told personally that by anybody that this is a problem, because it's not as if you will not have your regimental identity.
Of course.
So that beret remains with you.
Of course.
It's just that you're not wearing it.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah. That lanyard will remain. Nobody's going to rob you of it.
Yeah.
So that identity is there. It's just that it won't be visible in your day-to-day activities. And then, as I said, there are get-togethers, reunions of your regiments. People go there. So I don't think that identity is restricted just to these aspects of the uniform. I think that maturity has come in, probably.
Yeah.
Also, I would like to believe.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break before we discuss this further.
They're talking about Dhoni's legacy.
Yes.
That thing was superb, right?
The Dhoni's lap
The
of
way
honor.
Sunil Gavaskar.
Sunil Gavaskar went
Yeah.
and got his autograph.
Yeah.
But okay,
Hmm.
a lot of people,
Hmm.
I mean, even I kind of thought that maybe because Dhoni's on the verge of some sort of announcement. What did you make of it?
Should I check Twitter now?
What did you make of it? That lap of honor. I mean, he's
No,
been several times. I mean, when
No,
they played our last
frankly
league match in
speaking, a
Chennai.
lot of CSK fans were kind of unhappy with the kind of ticket sales that was going around. As in, the franchise could not have helped it because
Who
a lot
told
of...
you that?
I've read reports, I've read...
No,
seen
you've read reports.
people
Everybody
on
has
Twitter.
read reports. But
No, people on Twitter, fans themselves have complained.
do you
that-
know of anybody who went to the Chepauk and
Yes,
came back?
yes,
with a point?
yes.
Okay.
A lot of people. I saw some YouTube videos.
They were angry with
Yes,
the management.
yes,
Why?
yes. Because like a lot of other franchises are selling online. Most of the tickets are being sold online, but CSK still sells a considerable portion of the tickets offline. And like in Chennai, there's always a tradition in Chennai. Like you come and like settle 10 p.m. on the day before the sale of the ticket. Like say
That's
if the
fun
ticket
of
sale,
buying-
yeah.
that's
But
the fun
then
of
if you
buying
wait for
tickets.
12-14 hours and then don't get a ticket.
How did you get your tickets for the Delhi game, DC versus CSK?
That's a long story. Raj. Let's not get there now. Let's not get there now. It'll give you business plans and all that.
Okay.
But to see Gavaskar do that was special. But I don't think that was a farewell lap or something.
No,
A lot
I
of
don't
people
mention that. I'm just saying that it was. By the way, Gavaskar himself was quite emotional.
Yes, he was.
He said a lot
How
of
many
things.
former cricketers would have done that?
Sunil Gavaskar.
Yeah.
And that was quite a moment.
Yeah. Dhoni also looked surprised. No?
Yes,
he was
yes,
like,
yes.
You know,
Imagine Sunil
He was
Gavaskar.
very happy to
yes,
see Sunil Gavaskar right in
yes,
front of him.
yes.
I mean, even when he was way before his first class career even
Yeah.
took off, Gavaskar.
But
Gavaskar is
Gavaskar has done a lot of things.
Yeah.
I remember when we won the second test series in Australia,
Hmm.
you saw what he did. He came out and he wrote a speech and gave it to players.
Yes,
Then
yes.
when we won against Pakistan, he was seen
Yes,
jumping and dancing.
yes.
So Sunil Gavaskar expresses himself.
Sunil Gavaskar is a fan of cricket now, even
Yes.
now. No?
Yeah, he is very passionate about Indian
He's a
cricket
true
and-
ambassador of Indian cricket.
and that shows.
Welcome back. Abhishek and I are discussing a decision that was made public last week. Officers of the Indian Army who are of the ranks of Brigadier and above will now be wearing a common uniform. Up until now, I think the basics were common. I mean, it was more or less an olive grey uniform. But there were some parts of the uniform that you could that differentiated them from the others. The hats, for example, shoulder patches, which were from the regiment they were inducted into the army when they were commissioned into the army. We've talked about regiments before. We discussed before the break. We'll have links to to those episodes in our show description. We've talked about this at length when the Agniveer scheme was introduced, and we spoke about how regiments are just like a large family, and which is why that identity is very, very crucial. But then Agniveer came in. We had a good enough discussion about that when it did.
I think we had more than one episode.
Discussed several aspects of it. And now this again is what you've said before the break, kind of linked to that, if not exactly. And you've indicated, not as though you know, but you
Of
made
course
an
we don't know.
yeah, but you made an educated guess that more is coming. We don't know that for a fact.
It
but
can happen 10 years down the line. 15 years
of
down
course,
the line,
But it does seem
because this aspect of the army wearing a common uniform is there
been
in
there.
the discussion.
Yes.
It's not something which is sprung up
of course.
just after this.
Yeah. So how do you see, if you were to kind of take a step back and look at the overall picture, you had the Agniveer, just talking about regiments by the way, right now. I'm not talking about what was talked, so Agniveer, we discussed back then, had many aspects to it. The whole financial aspect, paying salaries, paying pensions, etc., etc. I'm only talking about the regimental aspect of the army, which you've said this previously as well, that, a lot of people within the army don't get. People who are not from the infantry. Infantry is where the regiments mostly are. Do not really get this system. So, if you were to take a step back, look at the Agniveer scheme as much as it relates to the regimental aspect of the Indian Army. Now look at this move to have a common uniform for officers who are not on a day-to-day basis looking at one particular regiment. They're looking at much more than that. How do you see the larger picture of what's the thought process about the regimental system in the army right now?
See, I think this decision is a progressive step. First of all, frankly, while I have written about it that regimental system is very important to the army, but tweaking it is the mantra, isn't it?
Yeah.
How you can have the correct tweaks to sort of make sure that you have the right balance. It shouldn't be overpowering. It should not overpower the larger functioning and the identity of the army. Also because, see, you have to understand that, again, we come from the British Army.
Yes.
Infantry was your most important sort of holding on to ground, most important aspect of warfare. It still is. When you need to control territory, you need infantry personnel to be there. Having said that, the other arms play a much more important role probably than what they did before. And that role now is... I'm not talking about the traditional armored core tanks, artillery guns, UAVs. Army aviation is, expanding in a big way. The army wants their own resources for aviation, their own drones, their own helicopters. They already have. I mean, there might be a day when they say we want our own fighter aircraft. You never know.
Yeah,
so
actually.
it's expanding in a big way. And no, seriously, that was just a joke.
No, I get your point. Even
Yeah.
logistics for we saw with the China
Yes,
crisis,
yes, yeah.
logistics of transporting so
Yeah.
many troops.
And drones, I have seen, especially on the closer to the LAC, the kind of aviation assets that are being used for surveillance and how the aviation is expanding. The army now has 3 brigades just of the army aviation,
Okay.
which is a big thing. By the way, army aviation again wears grey berets.
Grey berets, yeah. They have
So
their
that's another one that stands out.
Yeah.
So, with the changing nature of warfare, I think there is a need felt that there should be more in common rather than what's different. So that understanding is somewhere there, and that's why these changes are being made. Also, we talk and hear a lot about shedding the colonial legacies. So this is also in a way a colonial legacy, isn't it?
Yeah.
The British Indian Army wore different kinds of uniforms probably. And that changed with independence. The British Indian soldiers of the Indian Army, or of the British Indian Army, the soldiers would wear khaki uniforms. Post-independence changed to olive green.
Olive green. Yeah.
Because the Pakistanis also
Wore
wore
khaki.
khaki. So
Maintain the difference between the two
so
armies.
the first change was done there and then. Probably the British military has moved on from these kind of uniforms. I'm sure they have a lot of ceremonial uniforms which are meant for different occasions. But I think their basic uniform might not be so much regimental oriented.
Right.
This is one colonial legacy which there is no harm in shedding and moving on.
Right. But just, because you mentioned aviation, army aviation, drones, etc., just randomly the thought came to my mind. And again, we'll be on a different tangent altogether, but that's what happens, when we discuss this. Whatever happened to the idea of integrated battle groups, something? IBGs, yeah. I think that was because you said something about, integration. That was their idea of, having an integrated unit that would be almost self-sufficient, right? You won't be just... Because if you can, I think Abhishek will be able to...
Still work in progress is what I can say. There are a couple of formations where the IBG has been sort of put in place. IBGs are integrated battle groups where you have the idea is to have several arms of the army in one place. See, the thing is, it's not that it's not happening. It still is happening, but in maybe a fragmented way. That kind of formal organizational structure maybe is missing. But I know of a lot of formations, especially at the brigade level and things like that, where especially the sensitive areas, where commanders have got sort of resources
Right.
from various places. But yeah, it needs a more formalized structure to be called an IBG.
Right. Sort of controversial question per se, but this is a theme I've been wanting to explore with you ever since we discussed the Agniveer scheme. The question might sound a bit brash, but the impression that one kind of gets when they do like sort of a deep reading into the whole regimental system, the different arms of the army, the different traditions, like having separate uniforms, etc., having their whatever. It's just like there are such distinct elements. It might be difficult to kind of get them together and make them function together. Does that really happen, or is that just reading too much into all of it?
No, I mean, see, the regimental system till the battalion level, again, as far as the vis-a-vis the uniforms, doesn't change.
Yeah.
Even now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if there's a commanding officer, a CO who's of the rank of a colonel, he will still wear the same uniform.
Yeah.
It's only when he becomes a brigadier. And this has also changed over the years. There was a time when lieutenant colonels were in a commanding role.
Yes.
And not colonels.
Yeah.
So probably, I think there are some armies, by the way, that end. I think the Pakistani army, if I'm not wrong, ends the regimental affiliations in their uniforms at the rank of a lieutenant colonel.
Okay.
So these things differ, but yeah, the Indian Army has been following a system now where a full colonel rank officer is in a command role. So that doesn't change. In fact, even later it doesn't change. It's only at the time of an officer becoming a brigadier when the person will have to sort of let go of these elements in the uniform.
Right. And, one last thought. You mentioned that this is also one part of the colonial legacy that's probably being shed. There's another one that also happened very recently. We never got to do an episode on that. Was the doing away with the cant system, cantonments in major cities of India.
Again, something which has been in the pipeline under discussion for long. Not suddenly something that's happened. So.
And I think this is actually something that has been debated in public for a while because civilians are involved in this. And, I think some cities have made this demand that please, have your base if you need to, but kind of give us our space as well. So that was it. So let me ask you this.
That'll take
some time, obviously.
Because it'll happen overnight.
Because it's a physical movement.
Logistics,
physical movement.
To be
of course.
Put in one place.
Yeah. Like who will take over water supply, for example, in this region?
It will take a while, especially in the bigger cantonments.
Of course.
Delhi cantonment, when it's not easy to.
Of course.
It's a huge cantonment.
Yeah.
See, Delhi cant is again. It's not as if it's completely cut off from civilian movement. I think they check identity cards and ask you where you're going and then they let you go. But yes, there are some areas are of course a no-go zone. But there are some cantonment towns where civilian movement is completely not possible. So that becomes a bit difficult. Yeah. So they'll open areas to public and maintain the military station separately.
Yeah, right. As that, and then before that, we had the information. You had the news about the ranks in the Indian Navy being changed.
That was only for one level. Officer.
Anyway,
not even officer. Equivalent of what a junior commissioned officer in the
would
army
be in the army. Yeah.
Petty officers and chief petty officers. I'll just like to clarify. The word petty has nothing to do with
being petty.
With being petty.
Of course not.
It comes from, I think, a French word. Which means a junior officer.
Yes.
So you can call them junior officers. If you don't like the term.
Think of it, I never thought people would actually take it that way. But now that you mentioned it, some people would if they don't know.
So it has nothing to do with being petty. Somebody might say that just because it's a junior officer, there's so much of class difference.
Why
are you calling them petty officers? It just means a junior officers.
Yeah.
Like in the army, junior commissioned officer. So it means a junior officer. But if you just want, actually, it's okay. Just if somebody wants to call it junior officer, be it. But I think the biggest symbolic change was, of course, the flag.
Yes.
The Navy flag.
The Navy flag. Yeah. Which you said you didn't really have a problem with.
Again,
So-
I didn't have a problem with that.
Yeah. So, what's the next piece of colonial baggage in the Indian Armed Forces that you think is best done away with? Whatever. I mean, that's you think is not really meant for today's day and age. Like, ho gaya, isko can avoid.
See, I don't mind history being part of this thing. I don't look at it as colonial. I think uniforms is one. I'm okay with a common uniform, complete common uniform for all.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. So that's one. Pieces of history should be. I don't think they should be done away with, just for the love of history and the sake of. Nobody's saying follow what the British did.
Of course.
You don't need to sing the national anthem.
Yeah.
See, it's an Indian version of the British Indian Army.
Yes.
Jai Hind is the salutation. There's no other English salutation across the forces. No?
Yeah.
So it's still Jai Hind. So that means you have Indianized it. See, there is something which people are very touchy about. And again, I'm not sure if that should be completely erased. How do I put it? See, there are references in regimental histories about a particular regiment's action against Indians.
Okay.
So that is controversial. Now, how do you deal with something like that? For historiography's sake, you cannot.
You can't do away
Do
with it,
away
of
with
course.
it.
Yeah.
But again, nobody sort of. I'm 100% sure that when a young officer goes through knowing your regiment's history and to enter the mess, they have to sort of give a test, right? Not write a test, but orally they ask questions as part of ragging. So I don't think they're asked questions about these aspects.
And even if they are, I mean, no one's celebrating that.
Nobody's
that sort of
celebrating
way. I mean,
it.
it's hooah. That's what has happened.
Yes,
It's
what has
just like-
happened has happened.
Yeah.
So other than that, I mean, you tell me. I mean, what is
No, I'll
that
rephrase.
you would want to?
I can't answer the question because I don't know which one is actually from colonial times. So I'm not that aware.
A lot of them are. I mean.
But I'll rephrase the question then.
See, the culture is colonial.
Yeah, of course.
So do you want to do away with the culture? Culture in itself, the concept of a mess.
I don't see the need for doing it.
The concept of a mess. If you go to a mess, you do realize it's not just a mess for eating food.
Of course.
All the paraphernalia that comes with it comes from a very British army kind of this thing. So, I mean, those are colonial legacies. Now, should you do away with them?
I don't think so. Not the mess one, at least. But I'll rephrase my question. Because I wanted to ask, to make it a bit more serious, is that are there any traditions, are there any practices from British times that are still being followed that you think are actually coming in the way of the proper functioning of the
I don't think. Are there hurdles in your operational capabilities?
No, right.
I don't think so. I mean, we are a professional military.
Yeah.
We will not allow.
Just for tradition's sake, but wo bhi, right.
ऐसा तो नहीं हो सकता. See, the biggest colonial legacy, I think, is the regimental affiliations. Now, how far do you want to go on with them, keeping in mind a modern army's requirements? I think that should be the big question that should be discussed, debated every 2 years, 3 years, 5 years.
But I have a theory there. I think it, and you would agree with that. This has been discussed. This is part of an ongoing debate. I think the answer to that actually is that this is not something you can do it in one go.
Yes.
Because it is so ingrained.
Yeah.
Like, for example, कल जाके आप बोल दोगे कि अच्छा कल से the system is done away with. What happens to the years of training that the current soldiers have had? You can't make them forget that, right? So probably you'll have to, if for example the thought process is that you want to do away with it, you'll have to gradually induct new soldiers, not make them undergo the old training, and let the older ones sort of
The training is the same.
Isn't that mental, the psychological training of the regimental system?
See,
and,
the thing is that
Paltan
again,
wala part,
some of the
basically.
practical reasonings that are given, that a lot of recruitment happens from some regions,
From some regions,
areas.
yeah.
And
this
even
is
at micro level,
ingrained
even in a
at the
village.
region. Yes.
कि योर अच्छा वहाँ से तो सब भाई होता है ना. Even if there's a neighbor, they say हमारा भाई था. So it's very common for people to have these bonds within their paltans. So you know that this guy is there. I will also go there. So that there is that affiliation of your background or the region that you come from. Like there are 3 separate regiments that cater to Sikhs. All infantry regiments. I'm not talking about regiments, paltans in other arms which have a Sikh sort of component. Just infantry regiments. There's a Sikh light infantry, there's Sikh regiment, and there's Punjab. 3 regiments. Just imagine the inflow of people from there. That they're all full of Sikhs.
Yeah.
It's not as if they're all people from Punjab.
Yeah.
So that means people are coming. So that is the dilemma, how do you deal with it?
Yeah. So I think even if you want to, it'll have to happen
Again,
very long period of time.
Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand has, there's Garhwal, there's Kumaon.
Yes.
And the intake, even in other regiments from Uttarakhand, you will come across guys from Uttarakhand who are in other regiments. Again, you can imagine the intake just from that one state. So these are some of the things that are very difficult to sort of iron out and answer these questions.
Yeah. Interesting chat. Good that we talked about this because I kind of knew, but we didn't discuss this, for our listeners and viewers. I had no idea what Abhishek wanted to talk about when he mentioned this topic. Because this week was quite busy, we didn't get a chance to share our thoughts. So I just did some of my own research thanks to our producer Anna and came to it. But I had a feeling that somehow we'll end up on this trajectory because, like I said, when I read this the first time, I had a gut feeling that this is not just about just uniform change. This has got something to do with the larger happenings that are going.
In the beginning, I told you why it was possible. It was made a little easier. The decision was made a little easier.
Yes.
Because of
good insight,
the
by the way.
person right at the top. It does make a difference.
Does make a difference. Did not think of that at all, by the way. But yeah, that's a good insight. Good that you caught that thing. Nice touch it gave to this conversation. So thanks once again for a great conversation. Once again, thanks to your insights from your years of covering the military. Thanks again for a lovely conversation, and thanks to our listeners and to our viewers. Do join us next week. Thanks also to our producer Anna Priyadarshini and our sound master Kapil Dev Singh. And a special thanks to somebody who's been helping us, with these with this podcast video, because I don't know what to call it now. Ever since we went on camera, Shakil Ahmed, who's been coordinating our shoots every week. Thank you all. That's it for this week's Defense Doors. For more, tune in next week. Till then, stay safe and do not cross any boundaries with your passport. Bye-bye.